we're recording.
And this session is in fact being recorded.
Yes. And today's session is, sorry for all the confusion here, dynamic layout tools in Map 3D and Civil 3D. My name's Stan Henne. I'm the Business Development Manager here today, but more importantly, I have Warren Geisler, our Training Center Manager and our Geospatial Technical Specialist here at CAD-1, who will be doing the actual presentation today. So let's run through the little bit of groundskeeping. If most of you know this, if you've been on the webinar at all, imagine if you haven't. So you know how to change between telephone and mic and speakers if you need to. You use the little orange arrow to minimize the console.
Did you notice that?
Yes, you changed.
I changed the picture there. I just did that yesterday. I had the old picture on there.
The raise your hand button, and most importantly, the ask questions button. We do not mind if you ask questions, and we'll try to get them answered as closely to in context as possible so they make sense for everybody.
And everybody will be muted for this, so definitely if you've got a question, don't just try to shout out at your computer or be it on your phone or anything. Please do type in the question.
Yep. And with that, let's see, do we have anything else?
Things that we're going to be chatting about today. Okay, so I did change up the name of it a little bit because putting in north arrows, bar scales, and legends on my first slide was a little bit lengthy. But yes, in fact, when the notification was sent out, what are we going to talk about today is some of the newer features inside of AutoCAD Map and Civil 3D. And these are layout tools specifically for layouts, so paper space layouts. So the new tools are north arrows, bar scales, and legends, and what makes them so new. And the big thing that you're going to see here is, hey, we've already got north arrows, I've already got bar scales, I already know how to do all this stuff, but these things are dynamically linked to your drawings, dynamically linked to your viewports, dynamically linked to the maps that you've assigned to your viewports, a lot of cool stuff in there. So I'm going to show you all about these new features, where you can use them, where you cannot use them. I'll just kill that one right now, where you cannot use them. Model space. Okay, moving on. How they work, they're pretty straightforward and pretty easy, but another question that I've been getting a lot is, how do I make my own? So we'll be chatting about that for a bit. Okay, but first I'm going to ask a couple of questions.
Warren, while you're teeing up those questions here, let me just throw something out there, because I think this is a pretty significant presentation that you will be doing along with Justin Clark from the president of BIMShift next week at the AEC Blue Book Expo. And this is pretty groundbreaking what Warren and Justin have worked up here concerning the BIM, Building Information Modeling, to GIS coordinate integration. Kind of been the holy grail of the industry. How do you tie a building coordinates in with geospatial coordinates?
With survey coordinates and with civil engineering coordinates.
So these two have worked out some workflows that make that possible. So if you can take the morning off on next Thursday, the 25th, and come down to Mile High Stadium, and you can go to Blue Book AEC Expo Denver on the web. We should have had that up on a slide, but that's okay.
Sorry about that.
Blue Book AEC Expo Denver, and register for that, and this will be a really good presentation.
It's going to be, yeah, it's AEC, and I know a lot of the people who signed up here are civil or geospatial people, but like Stan just said, and I've been getting this a lot on my end too, is integration of BIM or architectural models with civil engineering, and then integration with GIS. And so Justin and I are going to chat a little bit. We're going to start with coordinate systems, which seems to be a big bane for everybody.
Especially if you're working with airports or hospitals or things like that. It's really becoming very vital. So enough said on that plug.
Okay, so moving into your north arrows, bar scales, legends. First question for everybody that I'm going to pop out there. So I'm going to let you read this off, Stan.
All right, and obviously, what version of Map 3D or Civil 3D are you using? Boy, if you've jumped up to 2014 already, you are a glutton for punishment. It's actually not a bad product. It's just Nobody jumps that early.
Yeah, I think it just came out last week or
Yeah.
something.
And then there's the 2013, the 2012, the 2011, and yes, we'll catch up someday. And then the 2010, living in the DOS world with brontosauruses and Tyrannosaurus rexes.
And I'm sure everybody's heard about how Autodesk is migrating everybody into newer versions and suites and things like that. So if you're in a much earlier version, you definitely want to jump ahead as quickly as you can. And I'm going to close the poll because it says 100% of everybody.
And let me, again, I don't mean to throw off your cadence here, Warren, but it does bring up another thing that we probably should make another mention to, and that is those of you who are on a current subscription, a lot of you know this already finally, but those of you who are on a current subscription for MAP or Civil 3D 2013, either product, and you're on current subscription, you will automatically be migrated at no cost, but still you will, or at least no upfront cost, you will be migrated to, in the case of Civil 3D, to Infrastructure Design Suite Premium. If you're on MAP by itself, you will be migrated to Infrastructure Design Suite Standard. You can go to the Autodesk website and see what's in those things. It's actually a pretty darn good deal, all things considered, but some of you just, can't
be bothered.
With all that for whatever the reason. We will be getting out to you shortly. In fact, it's probably out by now. They said it would be the week of the 16th. An opt-out button or link that you can go to the website, Autodesk website, and opt out of this migration if you want to. You will have until early January of next year to make this opt-out. If you do accept the upgrade or the migration to one of the suites, your subscription price will go up not terribly radically. You're in the neighborhood of about $50 per seat per year. So if you have a lot of seats, it can be a chunk. But anyway, wanted to make sure you were aware of that because that will be something you will be bumping your head on.
Yeah, we don't want anybody calling us up and going, hey, what happened to my program, and screaming at us. So we want to warn everybody as quickly as possible. And if you need more information about that, feel free to call us here and chat with Stan or one of the other salespeople.
Kelly or someone.
Kelly or somebody. Okay, next question. So I'm talking about, as I mentioned, North Arrows, bar scales, legends, a lot of the new layout tools.
Okay. When, Warren, did these cool new layout tools appear? In 2013, or was it 12? Maybe it was 11. 2010, or was it earlier?
Now, the reason I'm throwing this out there is here's another thing, and you, a lot of people have asked questions about this, and we've all seen YouTube videos and the videos that are coming with the programs and all these new feature weblogs and Lynn Allen's blog and Heidi's blog, and all of the new features are being thrown out there on a version-by-version basis. And so at CAD-1, we've really cut down on our update classes. One of the questions that keeps popping up is, hey, you're showing off something, but when did that appear? So I want to see if everybody knows when that appeared and kind of give a good idea and say, okay, I think I already know about this one. So this is going to be kind of interesting. Okay, so almost half of you think it's 2013, half of you think it might be 2012, and some of you think it's actually earlier. So here's a big one for you. It just appeared in 2013. So these new features are only going to be available for those of you who are using 2013 and beyond. So the reason I push that is just to give everybody an education that a lot of these new features are popping up on a version-by-version basis, and they're sneaking in there, and you may or may not know what you've got in your software or what has been around for a number of years or what's just coming out. So take a look at all of the videos and all of the information you can to find out, and these webinars definitely, to find out when some of these new features are popping in there.
Well, and I think the other important thing there, not that we're trying to push you to subscription or beat you up on any of the versions or anything, but for your convenience, Autodesk, you will see Autodesk in the future here releasing new features for various products, in more of a streaming way than the typical, hey, this year we're going to do a overall upgrade. So, you know, again, the more you can stay current, the better off you'll be.
Things are going to pop up there. Okay, and I always like to know who I'm chatting with here. So I've got about 24, 25 people in the audience here, and I know a lot of you, but I get a good feel for how much you all use these features.
How much map GIS functionality do you use/need? 100%, all of it, 75%, most of it, and maybe a little more, 50%, 25%, map. What's map?
What's map? Okay, 60, 70, 80, 90, and...
It's fun to watch the bars jump around.
I know.
People make up their mind.
Yeah, choose this. No, change my mind. Choose this. No, change my mind. Okay, I'm going to close it in about 3, 2, last chance to change your mind. 1, and I'll go ahead and close it. All right, let's take a look at who's here. Okay, it looks like just a few of you are using all of it or even most of it. It looks like most of you are falling into that 50% range. Images, occasional shape files, that kind of thing, just using a little bit of the technology.
Well, and obviously a couple of you anyway are out there exploring, you know, maybe what map is or how to use it, or is it something that would be valuable to us or something along those lines.
Yeah. So let's chat about that. Let's chat about some of these new features. We're going to start with north arrows. And I know I had it differently organized in the screen there of legends, north arrows, blah, 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 but I want to save legends for last. So let's talk about north arrows. Okay, first of all, in AutoCAD Map 3D, we've got a big selection of north arrows. And I know a lot of you are going, boring. I've already drawn up my north arrows for my organization, but I want to show you some cool features that these north arrows can do that yours can't. So, yeah, maybe if they can, then we want to talk to you about developing software. So we've got a whole bunch of north arrows in there, about 30 of them, I think. So as you see, they go from pretty simplistic all the way up to, I love that one down there at the bottom. This guy right here is just amazing. Talk about ornate. Okay, so we've got a pretty big selection. The important thing to remember that I'm about to show you is that when you attach a north arrow in your drawing, you are not just popping a north arrow down somewhere on your screen. You are literally going to link the north arrow to a viewport. So, that being the case, there can only be one north arrow per viewport. If you try to attach another north arrow, if you go, I changed my mind, and the engineer or somebody wants this other north arrow, you've got to erase the other one before you try to apply it. You're going to get an error message. However, which is really this feature right here is pretty cool. When you go to apply a north arrow, if you look down there at the bottom of that, you can load your own custom north arrows. So for those of you who built up your own north arrows over the years, don't panic, you can load up your own. So yep, you've got that option right there. But, I mean, really, 30 north arrows? That's a lot. Okay, so let me show you all about this. The first drawing I'm going to jump in, here's an AutoCAD map drawing. And yeah, these tools are available inside of Civil 3D. So for those of you using Civil, these are some really cool features. And you've all probably seen this before. If you haven't, this is, there's almost no model space geometry in here. Everything that you see here that's in model space is actually shape files, connections, GIS data that I've linked to from all these different resources. So the first thing that I've got here are all the parcels inside the city of Denver. It's here, really pretty paper space layout. And I was going to pop that in as another question of how many of you are all using paper space layouts for printing. If you're not using paper space layouts for printing, you'd just soon shut down now because this is all about paper space layouts. So I've got the drawing up in here. I've got my pretty logo, my title block. As you see, I've got in here, I've got a nice little legend, and I've got a north arrow, and I've got a bar scale. These are the kinds of things that everybody can do anyway. However, first thing to take a look at is that the legend comes completely off of my AutoCAD map. Now by that I mean that I'm using in model space the task pane here to create display maps. Now you'll notice that the display maps did not pop up until I actually opened up the viewport. So another feature that's going to help everybody out is you don't actually get to see a display map until you open up the viewport, and then you get to see which map that you want to display. And if you don't know what display maps are, very quickly, just to give you an idea, it's just how, it's sort of like AutoCAD styling. How do I want my GIS information to look? So as you see here, I've got some state highways from CDOT. I've got all these parcels from the city and county of Denver. And what I've done is I've color-coded all the parcels, and I did that all automatically. I think I've done a video about that before. But I've color-coded everything based on the land use information. And then what I really want is I want that nice legend to pop in here. This legend is a dynamic object. If I wind up changing my display map for whatever reason up here, and I've got a few of them that I'll show you, if I wind up changing that, my display map will update. If any of this information changes, my legend will update. So everything goes back and forth and everything's dynamically linked. Now, in order to make these things work, zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to shut that down because it's a big drawing. But in order to make these things work, in paper space with the layouts or with the viewports closed, I've got this option up here for my display maps. So as many of you probably know, if I attach GIS data, I can stylize it, I can color code it, I can make it look really nice, and I can create a name for that. And as you see here, I've got a few names, like the land use and Colorado oil and gas stuff and state information. So I've built a couple maps of how do I want my information to look. And when I do this, I can pick a particular map and I can apply it to a viewport. So if I want one map, like my land use, applied to that viewport, now you see I've got a key map down here. That's the same information. All I've done is I've applied a different map to that viewport and a different scale factor to that viewport. So I'm not copying and pasting anything. It's all the same information. Once I've linked these display maps to my viewports, then things like the bar scales, the north arrows, all of that, they start coming in and doing some pretty darn cool things. But this is my overall map that I'm going to end with here. So let's switch over to something a little bit quicker and cleaner. And what were we talking about there? We were talking about north arrows. Okay, so let's talk about these north arrows and how they work. So this is the same map, another viewport, more information. When you're in a layout, and remember that everything inside of AutoCAD and AutoCAD Map and Civil 3D now, it's all ribbon-based and it's all dynamic. So as soon as I go into a layout, I get a new ribbon that automatically pops up. Now some people get annoyed by this. In plain AutoCAD, we've only got a couple of features like viewports, but as you get into some of these vertical applications like Map and Civil 3D, now you start getting some of these cool features that pop up. So when I'm in the layout tools, and this only pops up inside of a layout, I've got these options for attaching the display maps, the reference system, and then all of my layout elements. So to start with, I want to attach a north arrow. What kind of north arrow do I want? You just saw the examples of this. Good heavens, a whole bunch of them in here. So you get to pick whatever north arrow that you want. The first thing that the program is going to ask you down here is it's going to say pick a viewport. So I'm not just inserting a north arrow and popping it down somewhere. I'm going to go ahead and pick a viewport. Where do you want to pop the north arrow down? There we go. All right, that's kind of boring. Yeah, just plopping in a north arrow. But here, can your north arrow do this? When you select that north arrow, it looks like a dynamic block. So I've got all of these cool dynamic block grips. Here's the rotation of the associated map. In other words, the associated viewport. If I change the north arrow rotation factor, then the viewport automatically changes the rotation factor. So for those of you who have to do things like maps, plans, profiles, or shift your north to any direction, how many times have you opened up the viewport? Now, I'll run you through this in your head. You open up the viewport, use the DView command, use twist, you rotate it, you write down the angle that you rotate it, use the rotate command on the north arrow, you use the same angle. And as you know, yes, now we can rotate the actual viewport, but look how cool and quick this is. It's dynamically linked to the viewport. Okay, pretty cool, isn't it? I can also change the scale of the north arrow, so I don't have to use the AutoCAD scale command. And then you might be coming up here and going, okay, what's this little button? Now that's the tool icon that we've got with these features. And each one of the features has a different tool icon and it does different things. So I can reset north up. I love that one because, you know, unless you've got something like ortho turned on or you've done something weird, okay, I just want to reset it. And then the other one is that if I inserted a different north arrow or I've copied one, I can actually grab this and say relink it to a viewport. Now remember what I said earlier. I don't like that north arrow. I want to change it. Boss doesn't like it, wants to change it to something else. So I pick this and I come up here and I grab this guy. Nothing happens. Down here, warning message. Okay, it's already got a north arrow associated with it. Can't do anything. So I've got to erase this in order to do something else. No, don't explode it. I know somebody was thinking that out there. What if I just explode it? No, don't explode it. Don't do it. Okay, so there's your examples of the different north arrows that you've already got inside the program. All of these are just inserted blocks right out of here, right out of this list. Okay, but there's only 30 here, and maybe in my office I want 50. Or I look at all 30 of these and I don't like them and I want to insert my own. So as I mentioned before, I can load a custom north arrow. In order to load a custom north arrow, all you need is an AutoCAD block. You just need to define it, create something that you like as a custom north arrow, and have it either in the current drawing, as you see here. I want to look in the current drawing, or I can browse. I can go into any other drawing, find a block, and plop it in here. So I've already got one in here, or I had one. I wonder if I saved that. Hang on. Huh. That's interesting. I think my system didn't save my drawings yesterday. Oh, well.
Well, dang it.
Well, dang it. I hate it when that happens. But anyway, I had a pretty funny one in here. But if you've got your own custom block, and you can use any one of these as a roadmap, you just bring it in here, and yes, that's an instance when you do an explode, and then you can create your own.
Knowing you, it was a north arrow that pointed to beer.
Well, that was close, to be quite honest.
Warren Matt asked the question, and you can get to it here when you kind of weed through what you've got going on there. Yes, could you go over, in parentheses, or if, to change the crosshairs /USC inside a rotated viewport for labeling and annotation with this method?
Well, I can chat about that a little bit.
Oh, well, that one's good.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and create a new block definition off of an existing one. I'm going to call this one Warren's North Arrow. I had a fun one in there too. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pick a spot in here, which would just be the center O snap. Select my objects and hit OK. Now, the important thing is that when inserting these, you want to make sure, to remember that everything in layout, everything in paper space is always done in plotted units. Your plotted units are always going to be in inches. So when you draw this up, you want to draw it up in paper space. Make sure your units are in inches, because when the program does the insert, it will do the scaling for you on the fly. Now that I've got my little Mr. Happy in there, let's come back over here to my viewport. Erase this guy. And then now I'm going to load my custom north arrow. And this will give you a list of all the blocks that are inside the current drawing. Now that I've loaded it, pick my viewport, and there's my Mr. Happy. So that now, if I do the rotation or anything else in there, the program will automatically use that value. So pretty straightforward. If you've got your own north arrows and you don't like those, just create your own. Okay, I'm going to get rid of Mr. Happy here. Just create your own. Build your own north arrow block in there. Use these as roadmaps. So when I come in here and I pick one of these and I bring it in, it's going to be a dynamic block. It's going to have attributes inside here. So this is a dynamic block. And if you're not familiar with how to do dynamic blocks, I think we've got a webinar that's posted on our website about that.
I believe we do.
Yeah. So it makes it easier. Rather than using the rotate command, it's just using the grips. Okay, now that I've rotated that, if I open up this viewport, okay, you'll notice as long as I've used the dview command inside here, my crosshairs are going to be set at that angle. So if I turn on things like ortho, you'll notice that everything is going to be relative to that. Now, if I don't want everything relative to how I've rotated it, I've got a couple of options. one of my options that I like more than others is using snap settings and changing my snap angle in here. Okay, so I can modify the snap angle and how I'm doing things, rectangular snap, or do I want a polar snap, etc. Or I can just use the UCS command. Now the UCS command is always a little bit tricky because when I use the UCS command, it is going to change north, south, east, west inside here. So it says what's the origin of UCS. I can go ahead and pick my origin, turn off my ortho, and then as you see here as I'm moving my mouse around slowly, I can change the direction of my X and Y for purposes of everything else inside the drawing. And I didn't use an ortho in there, and I should have. So now when I go to draw some text or something else, it will be nice and orthogonal relative to the way that I'm looking at it in my sheet view. Third option, and I know that a lot of people go, oh, never do this, but the third option is not to do either one of those. It's just to draw your text that has to do with the map right here on top of the viewport, and that way I don't have to worry about it rotating, worry about the layers, worry about anything else. So hopefully that answers that question.
Well, hopefully it does, Matt.
Okay, so there's all about the north arrows. Darn, I had a really fun one in there too. There's all about the north arrows. Let me switch back here. So pretty straightforward. You can add your own. Next thing I want to talk about quickly is the bar scales in here. You can add a scale bar to a viewport. We've got several different styles in both imperial and metric, so don't get confused when you look at these. They're going to have some pretty weird names, and they're going to have different styles assigned to them, and I bet the one that I created didn't get saved either. You'll have different styles. You'll have different settings. These can be AutoCAD blocks. And again, I'm going to recommend that if you don't like one of these, and I'll show you how to do this, use one of these as a guideline, modify it, and then add it in there. Okay, so as you see there, if I want to add another one, if I want to create one rather, I've got to use proper names for the attributes. Okay, so if I want to, and I brought that in, and I need to change the scale of my viewport, or I need to change the division of my viewports, as you see there, I've got it set to 10 miles, etc. I can change the size of the scale bar. So changing the bar division actually does change the size of it. In other words, it scales it up and down. It does not change your viewport. So as you might imagine, the scale of my bar, or the size of my bar scale, is going to have to change. If I mess with the scale ratio, that's basically your viewport zoom factor. So if I change that, it will scale the viewport, and it will change the bar scale. So you can have, in this instance, unlike the north arrows, as you see there on the left, you can have multiple scales associated with one viewport, but I have no idea why anyone would ever want to do this. So if anybody's got an idea, let me know. Okay, before I get in here, I know a lot of you are working in civil engineering and civil engineering projects. So let's chat about this a little bit, because you just saw a moment ago, let me back this up a little bit. You just saw a moment ago, if you look down there, I've got the scale bar division is 10 miles, so my scale ratio is 1 to some ungodly number. We'll chat about that and how it works right here. Okay, so my scale ratio down there is in plotted units. So back in the old days with original maps, it would say 1 inch equals, or 1 to 25,000 or 1 to 250,000 in GIS maps, which never made any sense to me, because we like doing basically a relative ratio inside of civil engineering and for most of our construction maps. And a relative ratio is, when we say 1 to 50, we mean a plotted unit equals 50 model units, and my model units are in feet and my plotted units are in inches. So that's relationary. 1 inch equals 50 feet. Program doesn't think that way, though. Program thinks a true scale ratio, so 1 inch equals how many inches. So when you're working in civil engineering or decimal feet, your scale ratio, you've just got to multiply it by 12 in order to get everything to work there. Let's see how that works.
And while you're seeing how that works, John makes a comment, I think, back to your query there. Maybe for 1/2 scale print to 11 by 17 and for full size. So that's where you might use a different scale.
I never thought about that. That might be a good idea.
Good one, John.
Good one, John. I'll have to play with that one. Yeah, you could change like layers and things like that, or which one appears. Now you got me thinking. Okay. So here I've got that viewport again. I've got another viewport, and instead of north arrows, I'm coming down here to scale bars. Okay, so this one gets a little bit iffy. As I'm doing the scale bars, you'll see I've got scale bar number 3, 2, 1. I've got 1 dash. It looks like 1-1, but that's actually I for imperial. So I've got metric scale bars. I've got imperial. And then I've got some imperial constrained and metric constrained. And I'm looking at all of these going, what on earth is all of this? Once again, and I'll show you how to do this, you can load your custom scale bar. So let's first just talk about how you're going to plug it in there. So I'm going to use the scale bar command. Just like before, if you look down there at my command line, it's asking me to select the viewport. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a viewport. Then this dialog box pops up. So it's not just going to insert a scale. First, I've got to fill in some blanks. So the first thing is the scale ratio in here. Okay, now remember, it's 1 inch equals how many inches. So these scale ratios can turn out to be pretty extensive, like 1,000,000 or something. And then down here, what's my scale bar division? Okay, and you can change it. You can change it to inches, yards, miles. Unfortunately, we don't have light years or parsecs yet, but I'm sure that's coming. So I'm going to change this to, let's say, 10 miles. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. And there this guy is popping in there. Now you notice as I'm zooming in and I'm going to plop this in, it's saying unknown units because it's going to plug all that information in here. Now those objects are AutoCAD attributes. But if you want to use one of your own, you've got to use the same naming convention in there. So you see as I've got right here, if I hover over this guy, I've got the same little, I've got the same little tool right here to the right where I can change it. This one to the right, oh, same thing. So as you see here, I've got 2 scales associated with 1 viewport. Changing one does not necessarily change the other, but it will scale the other. What on earth does that mean? So if I come in here, and I change my scale bar properties. Now my current ratio, as you see here, is 1 to 1,000,000. So what if I want to change that? I say 1 to 2,000,000. But I'm going to keep the scale bar division the same.
Actually, you've got 12 million right there.
Whoops, thank you, Sam. That would have been weird. I hit OK. As you see there, it zoomed in. And when it zoomed in, it sized my scale bars appropriately, both of the scale bars appropriately. Now, what if I didn't want to size it? Well, that's pretty straightforward, though, when you think about it. If your viewport scale changes, your bar size has to change, right? So if I didn't want that, then maybe I would need to change the division. So if I change the division and say 5 miles, watch what happens. Okay, that scale bar pops up, or changes size. Change the scale bar property to, let's say, 20 miles. Scale bar changes, but the viewport doesn't change. So each time it's just taking that one scale bar and sizing it relative to the units that are in there. Okay, hopefully some of that makes sense as you see how that's happening in here. Now let's take a look at the samples that come with her. All right, so those are the samples. We've got an imperial one, as you see there at the top. We've got a different one with graded differently. We've got some incremental ones in here. We've got some constrained ones in here. So if you want to use one of these, but you're going, you know, I like it, but I need to change something, use one of these as a roadmap. And by a roadmap, I mean, once you've got that guy inserted, just explode it. See how it works. So once I've exploded it, I can see that all this is an AutoCAD block with a regular insertion point, and I've got a handful of attributes. Each one of these pieces of text that's in here is an attribute. These attributes have to be the exact same name, everyone. So if you find something that you like, just explode it, keep the same names, and make the changes that you want to make. Once you've done that, you create a block out of it, and just like a moment ago, I can say load a custom scale bar, and I can go into the current drawing, I can go to a different drawing, and if I've got a scale bar that I've created, then I can load it up. And of course, it didn't save that one, and it was really colorful and cool, and I was thinking of actually putting beer in there too. But very quickly, a lot of people, what they like to do in here is they like to just hatch this, right? Something along those lines. So I'm going to create a new block. And you could change colors, you could change hatch patterns, etc. My base point, let's say pick that base point. Endpoint down here, I'm going to select the objects. Now, because the program's taking care of everything for me, and I'm not actually going to be editing any of these attributes, the names are what's important in the locations. So what I'm doing here, for those of you who've built blocks with attributes before, you're going, no, don't do that. You're normally supposed to pick the attributes in order, but I'm not changing it, the program is. So I don't really care. I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to say OK. Now the attributes do pop up, but I don't really care, because I want to use it over here where it's going to be cool. Scale bars, I'm going to load my custom scale bar that I just created. Now these are the kinds of things that you are definitely going to want to do inside your drawing template. And you can copy and paste them into your drawing template or have them available. Hit OK. I'm going to pick this guy. Again, this, I'm not going to do 1 feet. That would be bad. So again, I'll do 10 miles. Hit OK, and there you go. This is still reactionary, so if I change this in any way, scale bar properties, etc., it'll act just like any of the other ones. So adding your own custom content to the north arrows, to the scale bars, it's pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. With the scale bars, you just have to be aware that these are attributes and they have to be named a specific way. So just copy one. Copy an existing one that's in there. So as a quick recap in there about the scale bars, you'll notice that if they're not attached to a viewport, like if I've just copied them or moved them or done something weird to it, next to my little tool, I'm going to get a little yellow warning icon and say, hey, I'm not linked to any particular viewport. The other thing to remember is, what do these scale bars have in common? Take a look at them. Take a second. Okay, they're all exactly the same. They're all exactly the same scale bar for exactly the same viewport. They're just in either different increments or to different scales, or I'm sorry, different units. I could be using yards, I could be using feet, miles, not light years or anything yet, but so these are all exactly the same. It all depends on what type of increment you want to use. Back up over here. There's that viewport that I was showing you in the PowerPoint presentation. This is just a standard civil project. No, I didn't draw a lot of stuff up, but just to act like that's a great big, project with parking lots and roads and cool things like that. If I open up the viewport, you'll notice that my standard, whoops, wrong button, that my standard AutoCAD scale is set to 1 to 50. Okay, so that's my standard AutoCAD scale. I'm going to print my drawing. This is going to come out at 1 to 50. And then there is my bar scale for this guy. It does match up. Okay, so they do match up size to size, but as I showed you a moment ago, in my scale bar properties, my scale ratio has to be that 1 to 50 times 12. So you just got to do a little bit of math. Remember, everything when we plot is in inches. All right. Hopefully everybody's still doing good and hasn't fallen asleep with me. So there are the easy ones. There's the north arrows. There's the bar scales. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to type them in. Now let's talk about the legends. And you saw when I first got into the drawing, I've got a really cool legend there. I've got another drawing with the COGCC wells, and I've got a different legend there. So the legends are really for the GIS information, for the GIS maps. So a display map has to be created first. You've got to attach all of your GIS data. You've got to stylize it, give it a name, create a map, a display map, and then you've got to apply that display map to the viewport. Okay. Now remember, display map, how do you want your GIS layers and information to look? Note for everybody, this can be done with AutoCAD objects. So if you've got objects on particular layers, you can do display map. You can override layers, colors, line types, etc. You can add object data, etc. But this can't really be done with Civil 3D objects. Those intelligent objects, roads, alignments, profiles, etc., they really don't play well with this particular tool. This is really geared for your GIS data, pulling the information and color coding your map based on data that you've attached to. When you start with this, you're going to notice that there's only one style built in. It's almost like the standard style. Look at that. It's kind of boring. However, you are also going to notice that when you go to load your own custom one, you're going to have several that are prepackaged with the program, and they're going to look a little bit different. So these are going to give you kind of roadmaps to how to build your own. Now, there's two methods of building your own. When you bring one in, you can grab it, use the tool that, just like all the other tools, that little monkey wrench in there. You can go into the style, as you see there, and you can customize the style. However, if you take a look at that little dialog there, what can you customize? Well, you can customize the background color. You can customize the color of the title text and the font, the height, and some of the items, and the transparency, and that's about it. If you've all used AutoCAD tables before, you've got to remember that that's not it, is it? My personal preference is just use the AutoCAD table style command. Jump into the table styles. You're going to create your own new table style. You're going to come in here. You're going to modify things like the title text. Like in one instance, maybe I want the title to be a nice bright color, etc. And then once I've saved that, I'm going to export that as my new style. This gives you a whole lot better control, a whole lot more control, like what type of lines do I want, etc. So it gives you much more control over how you're building your legends. So let's jump into the legends. Okay, so there's my legend examples. Those are my three maps, by the way. So I've got a state map, as you see over there on the left. I've got my land uses. I've got my Colorado oil and gas well maps, etc. To add a legend, that's super easy. Okay, so to add a legend, I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to pick the legend style, and then I'm going to pick the viewport. And off of these standard styles, basically this guy over here on the left is what you're going to get. One of the things that people have complained about is, okay, so I've got that in there, but you know what? I didn't want this, like this area Dr. Cog aerial, so I didn't want that one showing up on my legend. I do want it showing up on my map, but I didn't really want it to show up on the legend. What the heck is that map-based thing? I don't want that showing up on my legend. Don't explode the legend and start doing some editing. Don't do it. You just go into the legend properties. You're going to use the little tool button. You're going to go to legend properties. What do I want to see on the legend? What do I not want to see on the legend? This is showing everything, so I don't want to see the map base. I don't want to see the Dr. Cog aerial. I'm going to hit OK, and it updates that. So don't explode it. I see so many people exploding them and tweaking them and wasting a lot of time.
Oh, I can't imagine if you exploded one of those.
Oh, it'd be a mess. Oh, this guy over here in the middle, oh, that'd just be a mess. And I'm not going to do it to show everybody, but yes, it would be a mess. Oh, here's another thing about exploding these. I don't know if I should have put that in as a poll. Let me take a look at my attendee list over here, and I want anybody in the group, and don't be shy, to raise their hand if they've ever exploded one of these legends. Not an AutoCAD table, but one of these legends. Has anybody ever exploded one? I'm not seeing anybody raise their hands.
No one's admitting it.
Nobody's admitting it, because here's what the real problem is. It's more than just exploding the AutoCAD table. You see all of this information over here on the left? Okay, that data is dynamically linked to your map, to your GIS data. When you explode the table, this information goes away, just disappears. So you got to go do it all over again. All right, so how did I get those other ones in here? Well, the same way. So I'm going to go browse for an external style. When I do that, the program, see, it did save mine. When I do that, the program's going to show you a handful of the styles that come right out of the box. And you saw those in the PowerPoint. They all kind of look the same. They've just got some different features in there. But here's what I did, and I'll load mine up in a moment. Here's what I did, is I just went into the table style. And yes, I'm still typing. Oh, and I'll show you why here in a moment. So I go into the table style command, and I'm going to hit new, or I can modify an existing style. I've got which cells do I want to use, title, header, data. I can change the information about what format it is, what kind of borders I have, what kind of text I'm using, and the color, etc. I can change all of those, and then I can export that as a style and use it. So that's real easy. A little bug in 2013, whoops, and I have reported this. So why did I type in table style? Okay, so text style button up here, dimension style button up here, leader style up here, table missing. So if you have Civil 3D or a map and you're in this planning and analysis workspace, you'll be missing the table style button in there. You can get into the CUI and edit it, but I'm lazy, so I typed it. All right, back in here. Come into my legend, or browse for that external style. Now again, these styles can be plugged into your template, or you can export them into an XML file and email them to somebody and they can just load them right up. Okay, which viewport do I want to use? I'm going to pick that guy, and what happened? Look at the command line. It's already got a legend associated with it. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean it. Delete it. Okay, pick that again. Hit open. Now I'm going to pick this guy right here. And you thought those colors were bad a minute ago. How's that for the old eyeballs? But you can do anything that you want to inside here. You can color code it. All I did for that, everyone, is I just went into the AutoCAD table style command and did a lot of tweaking and then exported it.
I think this points out just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it.
Just because you can. I'm not going colorblind, really. All right, so when I do this, by the way, if I want to keep this inside my drawings and not have to worry about exporting, importing, etc., I just plug that style into my template and it'll be there from then on. But here, if I go to Style, I can come down to Style and I can say save it as an external file, and that's how you save it as one of those XML files. And you can email it to everybody who's using that. But again, these tables, these legends, and this is an AutoCAD table as you see here, but it's a dynamic legend and it's linked to that viewport. And that means if my display map changes, if I come in here and I change any of this information, the names, etc., the color coding, etc., this table whoops, that was a bad choice of colors, wasn't it? Look at that. Let's try that again. This, stop there. That table.
Just because you can.
Just because you can. So that table right there is automatically going to update. So you don't want to explode them. You really don't want to go in there and try to use the table commands and edit them and modify them. Just leave them the way that they are. If you need to make changes, make them to your map. So those are some of the new layout features that you've got in here. When I was talking about coordinate systems in an earlier video, I talked about this reference system that you can attach to your maps. You've also got things like your layer visibility that are in here. But you need to be in a layout in order to get to these, and in order to attach a map, the display map, you need to have those already pre-built. And on that note, let me switch over here, show you a couple of these examples that I had already pre-built. So there's that Colorado oil and gas wells, and you'll see I've got the legend in there, and I've got my north arrow in there. This is just a display map that I built for all your information. Now, do display maps work in Civil 3D? Yes, they do. The thing that you've got to remember is that when bringing in GIS data, you've got to really watch out what you're doing about coordinate systems and this whole grid-to-ground thing. When you bring information in, if you don't change it, it's going to come in a planar coordinate system. We don't design off of planar coordinate systems at grid. We designed off of ground. So you've just got to be careful with the scaling, etc. Now, the scale factors aren't going to matter that much, so you can design the way that you want to. You can bring in the GIS data as state plane. You just don't want to snap to any of the data. It's going to be off just a little bit around here, just enough to mess you up. But then a lot of the GIS data isn't going to be terribly exact anyhow. So it makes for really nice displays, automatically linked legends, bar scales, etc. So you don't have to make any changes. And on that note, I'm going to start finishing up here. So if anybody's got any questions, now would be the time to pop up with them.
Well, speaking of which, John just popped up with one. What is that toolbar between the layout tabs in the command line?
Oh, this little guy. That guy right there. And it's technically, right-clicking here, stop it. It's technically not a toolbar. So if you right-click down on your status line here, this guy right there is typically your information. If I right-click down there, that's my drawing status bar. There are my standard, that's my standard information. But with this, as you see here, I can change 2D or 3D while I'm working in GIS information. I can add in vertical exaggerations for my GIS information. And most importantly, and the things that I like really well is excuse me, that it pulls your view scale up here. Without the status bar turned on, this guy down here gets really crowded. I mean, it just starts picking up way too much information. So I like pulling the view scale and a couple other things. You'll notice that once you turn it on, and it appears here, I've got the object isolation tools in here. I can turn on my annotation visibility, my auto scales, and this is, man, I can't tell you how nice that is. It will tell me what coordinate system has been assigned to the drawing, and I can change it right here, but it's always going to be there and be in front of me.
And then Joe asks, what happens if you use this to put a GIS-based vicinity map or key map on a drawing with your regular CAD design work, then e-transmit it? What goes into the e-transmit
Great question.
file?
Yeah, GIS information does not e-transmit too well, everyone. So if you want GIS information to go with your drawing, now all the information that you see here is basically, think of it as a hyper XREF. It's linked to the original files. I can do some editing. I can save my changes. But e-transmit, as a default, does not pull FDO information. This is called FDO information, by the way, Featured Data Object. So when I link to it, I connect to my data. Okay, and I can link to virtually any type of GIS data that I want. Now, as a default out of e-transmit, that information does not go with, at least in a proper, whoops, E-T-R-A-N. I like autocomplete because I don't type too well. Okay, give it a moment to save, do a lot of flashing, do a lot of jumping around. Okay, now you've got to be really careful with this. All right, so when you do an e-transmit, I've got, as you see here, images that are attached. I've got SDF files that are attached, shape files that are attached. However, if I'm linked to an external database, not a file-based data store, but an external database like Oracle or something like that, or some of you are using the Esri information, that information doesn't come with. Okay, just the file-based stuff will come with. So in that instance, I'm going to lose a lot of my information. So if you are attached to a database, an Esri database, you're going to want to take steps. Steps such as I can export my map to a particular drawing, or steps such as I can use other tools to import that FDO information and lock it down as AutoCAD objects. But you'll need to take an extra couple of steps. Now, if it's just files that you're downloading, those will go with. The other thing to remember, though, is that the files will go with you into the e-transmit, but the person on the other end had better be using Map or Civil 3D. Otherwise, they won't be able to see a darn thing. So there are a lot of different ways of sharing information. I did have a presentation that I gave a few months back, I think, and it was sharing information between Civil 3D and Map. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Okay, and I did talk about some of the ways that you can share this information, how to export the map or how to bring it in as AutoCAD objects.
And I will say that I believe we started recording these about a year ago, and for the first 3 or 4 months we had a little bit of trouble for some reason with sometimes they record, sometimes they wouldn't. But on our AutoCAD or our CAD-1 web page, under Events Archives, there's a webinar archive that you can go and you can find past webinars on our YouTube page and so forth. We've gotten pretty good at this now, but
but we make mistakes just like everybody else. So if you come up to our website, we've got our events webinars, we've got archived webinars in here. Damn, I can't click the right one.
That's all the upcoming stuff that we have, upcoming events. By the way, Customer Appreciation Day, we're going to have the Chief Technology Officer, Office Technologist, the Chief Cloud Officer, Pete Southwood, who's always fun and entertaining to listen to, Scott Main, Lynn Allen, June 14th. Mark that on your calendars. It's free. We have a breakfast, we have a lunch, we have a lot of fun stuff and giveaways, and most importantly, we have some really great, interesting speakers this year.
Yeah, we do.
And then later in August, Warren and Mr. Haley will be hosting our infrastructure technology day, and that will be August 28th, I believe.
I think so. So head on up to our website and definitely take a look at some of the events that are going through here. So there's the CAD-1 webinar archive. Some of these will be on our YouTube channel. Some of these we will have downloaded. I'm trying to find the one that I was talking about there. And I think that's it right here. If it says Citrix, that means that it's one that we downloaded. So if it says Citrix, that's, and you'll probably see a lot of mine that say Citrix because that's one that we kind of blew and messed up and didn't get it up to the YouTube channel. So we did download it. It's on our website. Yep. But I think that's the one that I was just mentioning there is exporting information from map to a GIS system. I believe that's it, or it's one of them in here. Document, or maybe that one. Document sharing techniques for all files, civil and map. That's the one. That's it right there.
So hopefully, Joe, I see that you feel like you got the answer you needed, but if you want to sit through more of this, you can.
Okay, so quick recap. Any other questions as I'm recapping up here? So there's a lot of new layout tools. They're only available in 2013. We've got legends, we've got north arrows, we've got bar scales, and each one's dynamically linked to the viewport, so they're intelligent objects. They're not just dumb drawing blocks that are out there. Look for the grips on these objects, or if you hover over it, you'll see the little tool icon at the top right of every one of them. They will work for maps, Civil 3D, AutoCAD drawings, but the legend tool doesn't necessarily play well with Civil 3D objects, and it will work for AutoCAD, but you've got to do a lot of setup to get these maps built inside of AutoCAD. And you can create all your own. The legend styles, you can create those pretty easily using the table commands. The other objects like the north arrows and bar scales, just use the ones that come with the program, explode them, tweak them. Now some of them, like the north arrows, if you've not done dynamic blocks, you really are going to want to break in there and take a look at those as dynamic blocks. Go into the block editor and see what Autodesk did to add in some of those cool rotation and scale values. Everything that you do, the table styles, the blocks, the legends, all that good kind of stuff, those should be saved in your drawing template. We know that everybody is using drawing templates today. I'll let you take over.
Well, I will take over. CAD-1 is on Facebook. Like us there. We're on Twitter. We also have a LinkedIn page. We have more things than you can shake a stick at on social media. Brian Haley also has a wonderful, very, very good blog on Civil 3D Plus at WordPress. And so you can get more information than you can possibly need. Lisa snuck something in here. It's just a comment, it looks like. She says, great job, Warren. Learned a few things, especially since I skipped 2013, and we will deploy 2014. So that's interesting. Good.
Lisa, send me an email. We got to catch up.
Yeah.
Lisa's down in Texas, I believe, still, and somebody that I met quite some time ago, so I'd like to catch up with you.
Well, anyway, folks, I think that's about it for today. We've got, yes, we've got our award-winning services as well, and they are award-winning. We're constantly in the top 5 training centers in North America.
We've got the #1 trainer in North America, ATC trainer in North America, Michael Calkins just won the award as the ATC Trainer of the Year for last year. So he's an excellent instructor for all things AutoCAD, and he's even doing some of the Revit tools.
And then I believe, if I'm right, it's 4 of our instructors are also in the top 10 trainers in North America. So this is the place to be. Let's see. If you would like more information, info at CAD-1. Otherwise, give us a call. You might, if you need to check in about that Civil 3D or map migration, please do so, and we will hook you up. We appreciate your time today, and we'll see you on the funny pages. Bye now.